Welcome to Nidra Narratives. This is a story about the most ridiculous weapon ever used in a war. It wasn't a gun, it wasn't a bomb, it wasn't even a strategy. It was a condiment, a pinch of salt. The year is 1930. To understand why this year matters, you have to look at the map. The British Empire is at its absolute zenith. It covers a quarter of the globe, 500 million people. 1 out of every 4 humans on Earth live under the Union Jack. But the heart of this empire isn't London, it's India. India is the engine. It provides the soldiers, the cotton, the wheat, and the taxes that keep the British economy afloat. And in 1930, that economy is collapsing. The Great Depression has just hit. The mills in Manchester are silent. The banks in London are terrified. The empire is broke. So, the British grip on India tightens. They need the money, they need the taxes, and this desperation sets the stage for the most bizarre showdown in imperial history. Let's zoom in on New Delhi. We're in the Viceroy's palace. This isn't just a house, it's a statement. It was finished just last year in 1929. It is larger than the Palace of Versailles. It has 340 rooms. It sits on a hill, looking down, literally looking down, on the dust and heat of Delhi. It was designed to say one thing: we are here forever. The man living inside this temple is Edward Frederick Lindley Wood, the first Earl of Halifax, better known as Lord Irwin. He is a fascinating villain for our story because he isn't a villain in the traditional sense. He is a tall man. Literally, he was 6'5". He is an aristocrat. He is a devout, church-going Christian. He prays every morning. He genuinely believes that he is the father figure to 300 million unruly Indian children. He believes that without British rule, India would descend into chaos and barbarism. On this morning, March 2nd, he is having his tea. A servant brings him a letter. It isn't a diplomatic cable. It isn't a telegram from the king. It is a handwritten letter from Mohandas Gandhi, delivered by a young British Quaker named Reginald Reynolds. The letter is polite. It begins with the words, "Dear friend." Think about the audacity of that. Friend. He is writing to the man who holds the keys to his country's prison cells. Gandhi writes, "Before embarking on civil disobedience and taking the risk I have dreaded to take all these years, I would fain approach you and find a way out." He then lists the crimes of the empire. He talks about the rupee ratio, how the British manipulated the currency to help London bankers and hurt Indian farmers. He talks about the fact that India, a starving nation, has one of the most expensive militaries in the world. And then he drops the hammer. He focuses on one specific law, the salt tax. But the most visible of all the taxes is the salt tax, the poor man's salt. It is the most inhuman poll tax the ingenuity of man can devise. Lord Irwin puts the letter down. He is baffled. Salt? Of all the things to fight for, independence, land rights, censorship, police brutality, why is this old man obsessed with sodium chloride? It seems trivial. It seems like a distraction. To understand why Gandhi chose salt, we have to understand the Great Hedge of India. This is a piece of history that sounds like fiction. In the 1800s, the British actually built a physical barrier, a hedge of thorny bushes and trees that stretched for 2,500 miles across the center of India. It was manned by 12,000 men. Its only purpose? To stop Indians from smuggling untaxed salt from the princely states into British India. For 100 years, the British had treated salt not as a food, but as a hostage. The Salt Act of 1882 made it a criminal offence to scrape salt from the beach. Imagine that. You are a starving peasant in Gujarat. The tide goes out. The sun dries the mud. There is pure white salt sitting on the ground. God put it there. Nature put it there. But if you pick it up to put in your dal, you are a thief. You can go to jail for 6 months. You must go to the government shop. You must buy the government salt, and you must pay the tax. At its peak, the tax was 2,400% of the sale price. It cost the average peasant 3 days' wages every year. It was a tax on sweat. It was a tax on blood. Gandhi knew what Irwin didn't. He knew that you can't rally a peasant revolution around constitutional reform, but you can rally a revolution around the dinner plate. Salt was the one thing that every Indian, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, rich, poor, needed to survive. By targeting salt, Gandhi wasn't just picking a law, he was picking a fight that unified the entire nation. But Lord Irwin didn't see that. He saw a condiment. He sent a cold 4-line reply via his secretary. He effectively said, "His Excellency regrets that you plan to break the law and endanger the public peace." He thought he had swatted away a fly. Scene 2, The Shadow of the Bomb, March 1930. But Lord Irwin had a bigger problem than Gandhi, and this is where our second timeline begins. While Gandhi is writing letters, another man is sitting in a cold, damp cell in Lahore Central Jail, 500 miles to the north. His name is Bhagat Singh. He is 23 years old. He is handsome, he wears a trilby hat, he has a thin moustache, and he has the eyes of a movie star. If Gandhi is the father of the nation, Bhagat Singh is its angry, rebellious son. To understand the tension of 1930, you have to understand that half the country didn't believe in Gandhi's non-violence. They were tired of turning the other cheek. They wanted to hit back. Bhagat Singh was their hero. A year earlier, Bhagat Singh and his partner Batukeshwar Dutt walked into the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi, the very heart of British power. They stood in the visitors' gallery. They looked down at the British lawmakers, and they threw 2 bombs. Boom! The bombs were not designed to kill. They were smoke bombs designed to make a deafening noise. Bhagat Singh didn't run. He stood there. He threw leaflets into the smoke, and he shouted the slogan that would become the heartbeat of a generation. Inquilab Zindabad, long live the revolution. He let the police arrest him. He wanted the trial. He wanted a platform. And now, in March 1930, as Gandhi prepares to walk, Bhagat Singh is waiting for his execution. He has become a folk hero. In the colleges of Lahore, in the factories of Bombay, the youth aren't carrying photos of Gandhi. They are carrying photos of Bhagat Singh. They are shouting for blood. This is the nightmare scenario for Lord Irwin. He is fighting a war on 2 fronts. On one side, the non-violent army of Gandhi, threatening to paralyze the economy. On the other side, the violent underground of Bhagat Singh, threatening to assassinate officials and blow up trains. And the 2 sides are competing. Gandhi knows this. He knows he is in a race. He famously told his friends, "If I do not act now, the country will turn to violence. The bomb will replace the spinning wheel." The Salt March wasn't just a fight against the British. It was a fight for the soul of the Indian resistance. Gandhi had to prove that non-violence was tougher than the bomb. Scene 3. The Departure. March 12, 1930. The night of March 11th. The Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad. The atmosphere is electric. 78 men have been chosen to walk with Gandhi. They are called the First Batch. They are a motley crew. There are scholars from Oxford. There are illiterate weavers. There are 2 Muslims, 1 Christian, and several untouchables. The youngest is 18. The oldest is Gandhi at 61. They have been training for this like soldiers. For weeks, they have been waking up at 4 a.m. They have been eating simple food, no spices, no sugar, to toughen their bodies. They have taken vows of poverty and fearlessness, and most importantly, they have taken the vow of ahimsa. They have promised that if a British policeman hits them with a lathi, they will not hit back. If they are cursed at, they will not curse back. They are training to be soldiers of peace. Crowds are gathering outside the ashram. 10,000 people are waiting by the river. They light candles, they sing hymns. Raghupati, Raghava, Raja Ram. The feeling isn't political, it is religious, it is a pilgrimage. Gandhi addresses the crowd. He looks frail, his legs are thin, he has high blood pressure. His friends are terrified. They think he will die on the road. The destination is Dandi, a beach 241 miles away. 241 miles. That is the distance from London to Paris, or New York to Washington, D.C. And he plans to walk it in the blistering heat of the Indian summer. He gathers his shawl. He holds his bamboo staff. He makes a terrible vow. I shall not return to this ashram until Swaraj, freedom, is won. If I do not get independence, my body will float in the ocean, or I will rot in jail. But I will not come back to this house a subject of the empire. He turns his back on his home. He would never see it again. March 12th, 6:30 a.m. The sun rises over the Sabarmati River. Gandhi steps out of the gate. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of the bamboo staff hitting the dry earth. 78 men fall in line behind him. The British intelligence officers are watching from the bushes. They send a telegram to Delhi. Mr. Gandhi has left the ashram. In the palace, Lord Irwin sips his tea. He is still betting that the old man will fail. He is betting that the heat, the dust, and the sheer absurdity of the task will break him. He was wrong. The impossible bet has been placed. The march has begun. Before we follow Gandhi onto the road, we have to zoom out. We have to look at the map of the world in 1930. Because this march wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was happening in a world that was already falling apart. Scene, London, 10 Downing Street. In London, the Prime Minister was Ramsay MacDonald. He was a Labour politician. He was weak. His government was surviving day to day. Why? Because the Great Depression had just smashed the global economy 5 months earlier. Unemployment in Britain had doubled. The mills in Lancashire, the heart of the British textile industry, were silent. Every day, angry workers were marching in London, demanding jobs. The British Empire was broke. It needed India. India wasn't just a colony, it was a lifeboat. India bought 30% of Britain's exports. If India stopped buying British cloth, the British economy would collapse. This is why the Salt March terrified London. It wasn't about the salt tax, it was about the boycott. Gandhi was threatening to sink the lifeboat. Scene, the American observers. Across the Atlantic, America was watching. This is a fascinating part of the story. In previous years, America didn't care about India. They saw it as Britain's internal problem. But in 1930, something changed. Time magazine put Gandhi on the cover. They named him Man of the Year eventually. Why? Because Americans love an underdog. They looked at Gandhi, this skinny man in a loincloth, and they saw George Washington. They saw the Boston Tea Party. No taxation without representation. This was a PR nightmare for Britain. Britain owed America billions of dollars in war debt from World War I. They needed American loans to survive the Depression. If American public opinion turned against the empire, the money would stop. So Lord Irwin in Delhi wasn't just worried about riots in Bombay, he was worried about headlines in New York. He was fighting a PR war, and Gandhi was winning it without saying a word. Scene, the communist threat. And there was a third player on the board, Russia. The Soviet Union was watching India closely. They saw the unrest as a perfect opportunity to spread communism. The British were paranoid about the Red Menace. They believed that if Gandhi failed, if non-violence failed, India wouldn't just become independent, it would become communist. It would join the Soviet bloc. This was the ultimate nightmare for the West. So, ironically, the British needed Gandhi to succeed in a way. They preferred a non-violent Gandhi to a violent communist revolution. This strange geopolitical dance, Britain needing Gandhi to keep the peace, but needing to crush him to keep the power, is the backdrop of our story. While the marchers were walking on a dusty road in Gujarat, the eyes of London, Washington and Moscow were all fixed on that bamboo staff. We are now on the road. March 12th turned into March 16th. March 16th turned into March 20th. The initial excitement of the departure has faded. Now it is just the grind. 241 miles is a long way to walk. To understand the physical reality of the Salt March, you have to look at the feet. Most of the 78 marchers were young students. They were used to sitting in classrooms, not walking 15 miles a day on unpaved, baking hot roads. By the third day, the blisters had started. The dust in Gujarat is fine and powdery. It gets into everything. It mixes with sweat and turns into mud on your skin. The temperature was climbing toward 105 degrees Fahrenheit. And yet, the pace was relentless. Gandhi, at 61 years old, was setting a pace that exhausted men half his age. There is a famous account from a young marcher named Karag Bahadur Singh. He was a Gurkha, a tough man. He wrote that he had to run to keep up with the Mahatma's long strides. When a reporter asked Gandhi if he was tired, Gandhi just smiled and said, "The inner voice speaks fast." But this wasn't just a walk, it was a moving ashram. Gandhi was obsessed with discipline. He believed that if the marchers lost their discipline, they would lose their spiritual protection against British violence. So, the rules were strict. Wake up at 4 a.m. for prayers. Start walking at 6 a.m. sharp. Stop at 10 a.m. when the sun gets too high. Spin cloth, khadi, for 2 hours. Write diaries. Walk again from 4 p.m. to sunset. Sleep on the ground. One night, in a village called Batgum, the marchers were given luxuries, fresh fruit and vegetables, by the local villagers. They ate it greedily. Gandhi found out. That evening, he didn't preach about the British. He preached about the fruit. He scolded them. He said, "We are not on a picnic. We are on a death march. We have no right to eat delicacies while India starves. If we cannot control our tongues, how can we control our country?" It was harsh, but it was necessary. He was forging them into a weapon. Scene 1. The crumbling foundation. While Gandhi was disciplining his men, the British Empire was beginning to crack. And it wasn't cracking in New Delhi, it was cracking in the villages. The British Raj didn't have enough white officers to rule 300 million people. They relied on a vast network of Indian collaborators. In every village there was a headman, a patel or a mukhi. These men collected the taxes, they kept the police records, they were the gears of the empire. Without the headman, the British were blind and deaf. As Gandhi passed through the district of Kedah, something unprecedented happened. The headmen started to quit. It started as a trickle, one here, two there. Then it became a flood. By March 19th, over 200 village headmen had resigned. They would walk up to the British district magistrate, take off their turbans, a sign of deep respect and authority, and lay them on the ground. They handed over their badges. They said, "We cannot serve a government that taxes the poor man's salt." This was the moment the British intelligence, the CID, stopped laughing. We have the secret reports sent to the Viceroy, Lord Irwin. In the first week, they called it a circus. By the third week, the tone had changed to panic. Report from the district of Broach. The administrative machinery is breaking down. The police cannot get food in the villages. The people refuse to sell us milk or vegetables. We are being socially boycotted. If we arrest Gandhi now, the villages will burn. But if we let him continue, the government will cease to exist in Gujarat. Social boycott. This was a terrifying weapon. British police officers would march into a village to arrest someone, and suddenly the village would go silent. The barber wouldn't cut their hair. The water carrier wouldn't bring them water. The sweeper wouldn't clean their latrines. The British officers weren't being shot at. they were being ignored to death. The prestige of the empire, the illusion that they were the masters, was evaporating in the heat. Scene 2. The prisoner in the north. But while Gandhi was dismantling the empire with silence, another man was fighting it with his own body. We must cut away now, leave the dusty road of Gujarat, travel 500 miles north to the Punjab, to the Lahore Central Jail. Here sits Bhagat Singh, the young revolutionary, the man who threw the bomb. While Gandhi walks, Bhagat Singh is dying. He and his comrades, Sukhdev and Rajguru, are on a hunger strike. And this is not a symbolic fast. This is a fight to the death. They are demanding to be treated as political prisoners. They want the right to read books, to associate with each other, to not be treated like common murderers. The British know that if Bhagat Singh dies in jail, he becomes a martyr larger than Gandhi. The youth of India worship him. So, the British decision is brutal. He must not die, but he must not win. They order force feeding. This is a horrific process. We have accounts from the prison logs. 5 guards would hold Bhagat Singh down on a stone bench. They would pry his jaws open with a steel lever. They would shove a greased rubber tube down his esophagus into his stomach. They would pour a mixture of milk and sugar down the tube. Bhagat Singh fought back. He would swallow hot water before they came in, so his throat was scalded and the tube couldn't pass. He would contract his stomach muscles to vomit the milk back up. It was torture, pure and simple, and the news was leaking out. The Tribune newspaper in Lahore was publishing daily updates. Bhagat Singh vomits blood. Bhagat Singh loses another 5 pounds. Bhagat Singh can no longer stand. The emotional temperature of India was reaching a boiling point. Imagine the tension in the villages. They see Gandhi, the saint, walking for their salt. They hear about Bhagat Singh, the soldier, dying for their dignity. The youth began to turn on Gandhi. Young men from the Naujawan Bharat Sabha youth society would show up at Gandhi's prayer meetings. They wouldn't pray, they would shout. "Gandhi, why do you talk of salt? Why don't you demand Bhagat Singh's release? Your non-violence is letting a hero die." Gandhi was in a terrible position. He wrote in his journal, "I cannot support the bomb. The bomb is the weapon of the coward, but I bow to their bravery. I bow to their sacrifice." He knew he was in a race. If the Salt March failed, the youth would reject non-violence forever. They would pick up the gun. Gandhi wasn't just walking to defeat the British. He was walking to save India from a bloody civil war. Scene 3. The world is watching. By April 1st, the march had become a global event. The circus had become the main attraction of the world press. The New York Times was running front-page stories. The German press was fascinated. But the most important man on the scene was an American named Webb Miller. He was a correspondent for the United Press. Miller is crucial to this story because he represented the American conscience. Remember, in 1930, America was dealing with the Great Depression. Americans were cynical about empires. Miller looked at the Salt March, and he didn't see a criminal act. He saw the Boston Tea Party. He wrote dispatch after dispatch comparing Gandhi to George Washington. "Here is a man," Miller wrote, "who is fighting the mightiest empire in history with a pinch of salt." This terrified the British. They relied on American loans. They relied on American goodwill. If America turned against the empire, the game was over. The Viceroy, Lord Irwin, started getting angry telegrams from London. Why is the American press praising this fanatic? Stop him, arrest him, do something. But Irwin was paralyzed. If he arrested Gandhi now, while the cameras were rolling, he would look like a tyrant. If he waited, he looked weak. He was trapped in the Gandhi trap. Scene 4. The Arrival. April 5th, 1930. The marchers arrive at Dandi. The journey is done. 241 miles in 24 days. Dandi isn't a city. It's a nondescript, muddy beach. But on this day, it is the center of the world. Thousands of people have gathered. Journalists, villagers, spies, police. The air is thick with salt and tension. The British Deputy Commissioner is watching from a distance. He has the warrant for Gandhi's arrest in his pocket. He asks for orders. Shall I take him tonight? The reply comes from Delhi. Wait. Wait for the act. If he doesn't pick up the salt, we can't touch him. The sun sets over the Arabian Sea. Gandhi holds a final prayer meeting. He speaks to his 78 marchers. He speaks to the thousands gathered. His voice is quiet, but steel hard. Tomorrow we shall break the salt law. I know the government is watching. I know the police are waiting. They may arrest me. They may beat you. But remember your vow. If they strike you, you must not strike back. If they drag you to jail, you must go with a smile. We are not fighting for salt. We are fighting for the right to breathe. He sleeps on the sand. The waves crash against the shore. The spies write their final reports. The police check their latties. And the sun prepares to rise on the day that will shake the world. April 6, 1930. Dandi. The sun is rising over the Arabian Sea. The tide is out. The air is thick with humidity and anticipation. This date was not chosen by accident. April 6th was the anniversary of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre of 1919, the darkest day in British Indian history. Gandhi chose this day to say, "We remember the blood, but we will answer it with salt." At 6:30 a.m., Gandhi walks from his camp to the water's edge. He is followed by thousands of people, villagers, journalists, spies. The British police are watching from the dunes. They have their orders. Wait. Wait for the act. If he just looks at the salt, it's not a crime. If he touches it, the empire crumbles. Gandhi wades into the ocean. The water is cool. He bathes, a ritual purification. He walks back up the beach. The sand is wet and muddy. He spots a deposit of natural salt left by the evaporating tide. It isn't a white crystal. It is a lump of brown, salty mud. He bends down. Every camera shutter clicks at once. Click whir, click whir. He stands up. He raises the lump of mud for the world to see. With this, I am shaking the foundations of the British Empire. He boils it in seawater. He eats a pinch. That is the crime. He has manufactured salt without a license. Under Section 47 of the Salt Act, he is now a criminal. The signal went out instantly. It was as if a match had been dropped into a room full of gasoline. Within hours, the telegraph wires were humming. Bombay, Karachi, Madras, Calcutta. He did it. It was pandemonium. Millions of Indians rushed to the nearest coastline. In Bombay, the scene was chaotic. People brought copper pans down to the waterfront. They built open fires right in front of the Taj Mahal Hotel, the symbol of British luxury. They boiled seawater. They made illegal salt. The police tried to stop it. They raided the beaches. They kicked over the pans. But for every pan they kicked over, 10 more appeared. In the cities, Congress volunteers started selling small packets of this illegal salt on street corners. The salt was brown. It was inedible. It tasted like dirt. But people bought it for 500 rupees a pinch. They weren't buying salt. They were buying freedom. The British legal system clogged instantly. You can arrest a revolutionary. You can't arrest a nation. Scene 1. The Frontier. Gandhi and the Massacre. While the salt was boiling in Bombay, a much bloodier scene was unfolding 1,000 miles to the north. This is a part of the story often left out of the history books, but it terrified the British more than anything else. We go to the northwest frontier province, modern-day Pakistan. This was the land of the Pashtuns, a warrior culture known for their rifles and their feuds. The British considered them savage tribes. But in 1930, a miracle happened here. A man named Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, known as the Frontier Gandhi, had raised an army. But it wasn't an army of soldiers, it was an army of non-violent peacekeepers called the Khudai Khidmatgars, servants of God. They wore red shirts, they swore an oath on the Quran to never use violence. When the news of the Salt March reached Peshawar, the red shirts rose up. On April 23rd, just 2 weeks after the pinch, the British arrested Khan. The city of Peshawar exploded in protest. Thousands of unarmed Pashtuns gathered in the Kissa Kwani Bazaar, the storyteller's market. The British panic. They send in armoured cars. One of the cars drives into the crowd at high speed, killing several protesters. The crowd does not disperse. They do not attack. They stand their ground, baring their chests to the British guns. They shout, "Allahu Akbar," and refuse to move. The British commander orders his troops to open fire with machine guns. And this is where the empire truly broke. The soldiers facing the crowd were the Royal Garhwal Rifles, elite Hindu troops. When the order came to fire on the unarmed Muslim crowd, the Hindu soldiers refused. They lowered their rifles. They said, "We will not shoot our unarmed brothers." This was the British nightmare. A Hindu regiment refusing to shoot a Muslim crowd. The divide and rule strategy had failed. The British had to withdraw from Peshawar. For a few days, the city was actually free. They eventually retook it with Air Force bombers, killing hundreds, but the damage was done. The myth of British invincibility was shattered. Scene 2. The Economic War. While Peshawar was burning, Gandhi was opening a second front in the south, an economic war. He linked the Salt March to a wider boycott of foreign goods. He told women, "Throw away your foreign saris, wear only khadi." He told men, "Do not buy British cigarettes, do not buy British shoes." And this wasn't just a polite suggestion, it was enforced with immense social pressure. In Bombay, Congress volunteers, often teenage boys, would stand outside shops that sold British cloth. They wouldn't hurt anyone. They would just stand there, silently, with their hands folded. If an Indian customer tried to enter the shop, the boy would lie down on the ground in front of the door. The customer would have to step on the boy's body to buy a British shirt. Most couldn't do it. They turned around. The impact was catastrophic for Britain. We have the trade figures from 1930. The import of British cotton cloth into India dropped by 50%. Think about that. Half the market gone in 6 months. British cigarette imports dropped by 70%. 16 British-owned mills in Bombay shut down completely. The port of Liverpool saw a massive drop in trade. Workers in Lancashire, England, were laid off because nobody in India was buying their cloth. This is where the genius of Gandhi's strategy becomes clear. He wasn't just appealing to Lord Irwin's heart. He was squeezing Lord Irwin's budget. The Iron Man of the empire, the business community, cracked before the politicians did. British merchants in Calcutta started writing frantic letters to the Viceroy. They said, "End this. Make a deal with him. We are losing too much money." Scene 3. The Midnight Knock. Lord Irwin was now desperate. The economy was bleeding. Peshawar was in revolt. The jails were full. He had to cut off the head of the snake. May 4th, 1930. Gandhi is camping in a village called Karadi, a few miles from Dandi. He is sleeping on a cot under a mango tree. The night is hot and still. His followers are sleeping around him. At 12:45 a.m., a convoy of trucks pulls up silently. The district magistrate of Surat, a British officer, steps out. He has 30 armed policemen with him. They walk up to the cot. The magistrate shines a flashlight in Gandhi's face. Gandhi wakes up. He is calm. He rubs his eyes. He recognizes the magistrate. "Have you come to take me?" Yes, I have a warrant for your arrest under Regulation 25 of 1827. Regulation 25. This was an old law from the East India Company days. It allowed the government to detain anyone indefinitely without trial. They didn't charge him with a crime. They just detained him as a state prisoner. Gandhi asked for a moment to brush his teeth and pray. The officer agreed. Gandhi sang a hymn, Vaishnava Jana To. Then he gathered his few belongings, 2 dhotis, a spinning wheel, and a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. He walked to the truck. His followers were weeping. They tried to block the road, but the police pushed them aside. The truck drove away into the darkness. They took him to the Yerwada Central Jail in Pune. They locked him in a special cell. They cut him off from the world. They thought, we have cut off the head of the snake. The movement will die. Scene 4. The woman warrior. But they made a fatal miscalculation. Gandhi had left instructions. He had appointed a successor to lead the raid on the Dharasana salt works. And his successor was not a man. It was Sarojini Naidu. Sarojini Naidu was 51 years old. She was a poet. She was known as the Nightingale of India. She was brilliant, funny, and fearless. She was the first Indian woman to be president of the Indian National Congress, and she was about to lead 2,500 men into battle. Imagine the scene at the camp in Dharasana. Gandhi is gone, the leaders are in jail, the men are confused. And then Sarojini Naidu stands up. She is wearing a simple sari. She looks at the rows of volunteers. She knows what is waiting for them at the salt works. She knows the police have replaced their wooden batons with steel-tipped lathes. She knows this will be a massacre. She speaks to them. Her voice is clear. Gandhi's body is in jail, but his soul is with you. India's prestige is in your hands. You must not use any violence under any circumstances. You will be beaten, but you must not resist. You must not even raise a hand to ward off the blows. You will be beaten, but you will not fall. May 21st. The sun rises over the salt pans of Dharasana. The heat is blistering. 2,500 volunteers form columns. They are dressed in white. Facing them are 400 native police, commanded by British officers. Behind the police are barbed wire fences and water ditches. The stage is set for the most brutal day in the history of the Indian independence movement. Webb Miller, the American journalist, is standing there. He has his notebook ready. He is trembling. He knows he is about to witness something that will change the world. While the men were being beaten at the salt works, a second revolution was happening in the cities. And this one was led entirely by women. In 1930, Indian society was conservative. Respectable women did not march in the streets. They did not shout slogans. They stayed in the zanana, the women's quarters. Gandhi changed that overnight. He realized he was fighting with one hand tied behind his back. Why use only 50% of the population? He issued a call specifically to women. He said, "To call woman the weaker sex is a libel. It is man's injustice to woman. If by strength is meant moral power, then woman is immeasurably man's superior." He gave them a specific job, a job that men couldn't do: picketing. Scene: the liquor shops. The British government made a huge amount of money from selling alcohol. It was a double sin in Gandhi's eyes. It destroyed Indian families, and it funded the British army. So, the women of India declared war on the liquor shops. Imagine this scene in Bombay. A toddy shop, liquor store. Burly men are trying to go in to buy a drink. Standing in front of the door are women. Not just young students, but grandmothers. Upper-class women in silk saris. Peasant women in cotton. They block the door. They sing hymns. They appeal to the men's conscience. Brother, why do you poison yourself? Why do you give money to the British? It was incredibly effective. It is very hard for a man in Indian culture to push past a grandmother singing a prayer. The sales of liquor collapsed. In some cities, revenue dropped by 70%.
Scene: the foreign cloth bonfires.
The women also took charge of the cloth boycott. They would go door to door in their neighborhoods. They would ask, "Do you have any British cloth in your house?" People would bring out their expensive Manchester suits, their foreign hats, their silks. They would pile them in the middle of the street, and they would light a bonfire. It became a ritual. Every night you could see the fires burning in the cities. The women would dance around the fire singing patriotic songs. It was a purification ritual. They were burning their dependence on the empire.
Scene: the jails.
The British police didn't know what to do. They were used to fighting men. They didn't know how to fight women. At first they tried to ignore them. Then they tried to arrest them. But the women didn't run. They went to jail proudly. Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, a famous leader, was arrested. Sarojini Naidu was arrested. Thousands of ordinary housewives filled the prisons. They turned the prisons into temples. They sang there. They spun cloth there. This was the final nail in the coffin for British moral authority. When you are arresting grandmothers for singing hymns outside a liquor store, you have lost the argument. The Women's War was the secret weapon that broke the will of the British administration. May 21st, 1930. Dharasana. We are standing on a dusty road north of Bombay. The air is shimmering with heat. It is 115 degrees Fahrenheit. In front of us is the Dharasana Salt Works, a massive government facility surrounded by barbed wire and water ditches. Guarding it are 400 policemen. They are commanded by British officers, but the men themselves are Indians. They are holding lathis, 5-foot-long bamboo sticks. But these aren't normal sticks. The tips are bound with iron. Facing them are 2,500 volunteers. They are young men. They are dressed in white khadi. They are unarmed, not even a stick, not even a stone. They are led by Sarojini Naidu, the poet. She has just given them their orders. You will be beaten, but you will not resist. The American journalist Webb Miller is standing 10 feet away. He is the only foreign reporter who managed to sneak past the British blockade. He watches as the first column of volunteers marches forward. They walk slowly. They are chanting, "Inquilab Zindabad, long live the revolution." They reach the police line. The British officer shouts, "Halt!" They do not halt. The officer screams, "Charge!" What happened next was not a battle. It was a butchery. I'm going to read Webb Miller's report exactly as he typed it that night. It is graphic, it is horrifying, but it is the truth. Suddenly, at a word of command, scores of native police rushed upon the advancing marchers and rained blows on their heads. Not one of the marchers even raised an arm to fend off the blows. They went down like 10 pins. From where I stood, I heard the sickening whacks of the clubs on unprotected skulls. The waiting crowd of watchers groaned and sucked in their breaths in sympathetic pain at every blow. The first column was mowed down. The police beat them until they were unconscious. Blood soaked the white clothes. Then the police stopped. The stretcher bearers, who were also volunteers, ran in. They picked up the bodies and carried them to a makeshift hospital tent. And then the second column marched forward. They stepped over the blood of their friends. They walked straight into the clubs. Thwack, 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 they went down. Then the third column, then the fourth. It went on for hours. By the afternoon, the heat was unbearable. The field was covered in bodies. Miller wrote that the courage of the marchers was superhuman. But he also wrote about the police. The police were becoming exhausted. They were also becoming unhinged. They were beating men who were already lying on the ground. They were kicking them in the stomach. They were piercing them with the iron tips. By sunset, 320 men were critically injured. 2 were dead. And not a single marcher had thrown a stone. Not one hand was raised in anger. Scene 1. The world wakes up. Webb Miller rushed to the telegraph office to send his story. The British censors blocked it. They cut the wires. But Miller was smart. He smuggled the dispatch out of the country. It ran in 1,350 newspapers around the world. Senator John Blaine read it on the floor of the US Senate. He shouted, "If this is British civilization, then God help us." The moral authority of the British Empire died that afternoon in the dust of Dharasana. The world saw the British not as guardians of order, but as thugs beating up unarmed men. The illusion was shattered. Scene 2. The Truce. January 1931. The stalemate lasted for 8 grueling months. The jails were full. 100,000 Indians were now behind bars. The British economy in India was paralysed by the boycott. The Viceroy, Lord Irwin, was tired. He realised he could not rule by the baton anymore. On January 26, 1931, he released Gandhi from prison. He invited the naked fakir to the Viceroy's palace in New Delhi, not as a prisoner, but as a negotiator. This drove the British Conservatives insane. Winston Churchill, sitting in London, was apoplectic. He gave a famous speech that dripped with contempt. It is alarming and also nauseating to see Mr. Gandhi, a seditious Middle Temple lawyer, now posing as a fakir, striding half-naked up the steps of the vice-regal palace, to parley on equal terms with the representative of the King Emperor. Parley on equal terms. That was the victory. Gandhi walked into that palace, sat down with the Viceroy, and drank tea. They talked for 24 hours over several days. On March 5, 1931, they signed the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. It was a compromise. The British agreed to release all political prisoners. They agreed to let people make salt for personal use. They agreed to return confiscated property. In exchange, Gandhi agreed to suspend the civil disobedience movement and attend the Round Table Conference in London. On paper, it didn't look like much. Independence wasn't granted. The salt tax wasn't fully repealed. But symbolically, it was an earthquake. The British Empire had admitted for the first time that it could not govern India without Gandhi's consent. Scene 3. The Ghost at the Feast. But there was a ghost at the negotiating table. A ghost named Bhagat Singh. We must return to our second timeline. While Gandhi was drinking tea with the Viceroy, Bhagat Singh was sitting on death row in Lahore. He had been sentenced to hang. The entire nation was watching the negotiations with one question in their minds. Did Gandhi save Bhagat Singh? The youth of India were furious. They flooded Gandhi with letters. "You are releasing the salt makers," they wrote. "But what about the soldier? What about the lion of the Punjab?" Gandhi did try. We have the records. He pleaded with Lord Irwin. He asked for the death sentence to be commuted to life imprisonment. He told Irwin, "If you hang this boy, you will turn him into a god. You will create 1,000 more like him." But Irwin refused. The British could forgive the salt. They could forgive the boycott. But they could not forgive the bomb. Bhagat Singh had killed a British police officer, John Saunders, 2 years earlier. To the Empire, he was a murderer. And Gandhi, bound by his code of non-violence, could not make Bhagat Singh a deal-breaker for the pact. Scene 4. The Hangman's Noose. March 23, 1931. The end of the story is not on a beach. It is on a gallows. March 23, 1931. Lahore Central Jail, 7:30 p.m. The execution was moved forward by 11 hours to prevent a riot. Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru are led out of their cells. They are calm. They are smiling. Bhagat Singh weighs only 110 pounds, but his spirit is unbroken. As they walk to the scaffold, they do not pray to God. They sing a patriotic song. Rang de Basanti Chola, O mother, dye my robes in the colour of sacrifice. They stand on the trapdoor. They shout one last time, Inkilab Zindabad! The lever is pulled, the bodies drop. Bhagat Singh is 23 years old. The news hit India like a physical blow. When Gandhi arrived in Karachi for the Congress session a few days later, he wasn't greeted as a hero. He was greeted by a mob of angry young men. They waved black flags. They shouted, "Gandhi, go back! Down with Gandhiism!" They handed him black roses, a symbol of shame. It was the most painful moment of Gandhi's political life. He accepted the black roses. He bowed his head. He told them, "You can crush my body, but you cannot crush my spirit. Bhagat Singh is dead, but his courage lives. I chose the path of life. He chose the path of death. History will judge us both."
Epilogue. The legacy.
So, who won? The Salt March did not bring independence in 1930. The British stayed for another 17 years, but the psychological chains were broken forever. Before Dandi, the British were the Marbap, the mother and father of the nation. After Dandi, they were just occupiers. They were landlords who had lost the respect of their tenants. Gandhi proved that you could fight a superpower with a pinch of salt. Bhagat Singh proved that you could face death with a smile. Together, they were the hammer and the anvil that forged a new nation. On August 15th, 1947, when the Union Jack finally came down over the Red Fort in Delhi, the crowd roared. And if you listened closely to that roar, you could hear the echo of two sounds. The tap, tap, tap of a bamboo staff on a dusty road, and the boom of a revolution.